Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here again to try and make sense of, well, everything happening out there.
That's the goal, isn't it? Taking all these complex, sometimes contradictory bits of global intelligence.
Yeah, from like the tiniest biological breakthroughs all the way up to huge geopolitical shifts and even wild weather.
And synthesizing it, giving you a clear picture of the forces shaping our world right now. We're digging into breakthrough science, technology that's changing everything, major conflicts.
It's a lot. We've got reports from places like NASA, that's the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, the UN, deep dives into tech journals, frontline geopolitical analysis.
Right. And the connections aren't always obvious. Like, how does creating artificial cells relate to, say, how fast human brains evolved? Or how does AI development connect to, I don't know, sanctions against Russia?
But it is all connected. That's what we try to unpack here.
Absolutely. And things are moving so fast. What sounded like science fiction just yesterday is now a real-world policy headache.
Okay, so where do we start with this mountain of information today?
Let's begin at the absolute cutting edge, where science is really pushing boundaries, maybe even challenging what life means.
You're talking about synthetic biology, right? I saw some headlines on this.
Exactly. It's moved beyond theory. Scientists are genuinely on the brink of creating living cells, functional cells, completely from non-living components, from scratch.
Wow. Okay, so that's different from like genetically modifying an existing bacteria.
Totally different. That's tweaking what's already there. This is de novo design. Building artificial life forms, basically, with genetic instructions we write ourselves, designed to do specific things nature never evolved.
That's kind of mind-blowing. It really changes the definition of life, doesn't it?
It absolutely forces us to reconsider it. And the potential applications, well, they're huge, especially in medicine.
Right, I read about targeted drug delivery. Places like the University of North Carolina.
They're working on synthetic cells that can mimic how our own cells behave. Imagine tiny, programmable biological machines.
So instead of flooding the whole body with, say, chemo.
Precisely. You could load these synthetic cells with the drug, program them to recognize only cancer cells, travel there, and then release their payload right at the tumor site.
That would be revolutionary. Minimizing side effects, making treatments far more effective.
That's the promise. Precision medicine taken to a whole new level.
Right.
But it's not just medicine. Think environmentally.
Okay. How so? Like cleaning up messes?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Bioremediation. You could design synthetic cells to literally eat pollutants. Think oil spills, heavy metals in water, maybe even microplastics.
Cells designed to clean the environment.
Or for biomanufacturing.
Yeah.
You could program them to produce valuable materials sustainably, like advanced biofuels or maybe plastics that actually biodegrade properly, tackling waste and energy problems at a microscopic level.
Okay, but the potential is amazing, but also sounds a little scary, creating artificial life.
Well, yeah, the ethical questions are massive, and we need to be talking about them now, not after the fact. Biosecurity is a huge concern. What if these things get out? What if they're used maliciously?
And just the basic morality of it. Are we playing God? Do these artificial life forms deserve rights or protections?
These are the big questions.
Yeah.
Regulation always struggles to keep up with the pace of science. And if we can now create life forms so readily, it makes you think about our own biological path, which actually ties into another really fascinating piece of research.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
It's about how fast humans have evolved. A study out of University College, London, UCL.
Right. I saw something about skulls.
Yeah, they did some complex 3D modeling, comparing ancient hominid skulls to those of our closest ape relatives like chimps and gorillas.
And the finding was, what? We change faster.
Dramatically faster.
Yeah.
Over the last few million years, the human skull, particularly the brain case, evolved at roughly double the pace of other great apes.
Double the speed. That's significant. Why? Just bigger brains.
Well, partly, but the study suggests it wasn't only about raw intelligence for, hunting or basic survival. The key drivers seem to be linked more to advanced cognitive abilities.
Like problem solving, abstract thought.
Yes, and crucially, really complex social interactions. Our ability to cooperate, communicate, form complex societies. That seems to have been a major evolutionary pressure cooker.
So the theory is that culture itself drove our physical evolution.
That's the really interesting idea here. It's not just that our biology allowed culture to happen. It's that culture, things like language, tool use, social structures, maybe even storytelling, created new selective pressures.
Pressures that favored changes in our brains and skulls.
Exactly,
Yeah.
leading to this rapid sort of nonlinear feedback loop. Culture pushes anatomical change, which allows for more complex culture and so on. We basically accelerated our own evolution by becoming hypervoral and hypercultural beings.
Culture driving anatomy. That's a really powerful concept. Explains a lot, maybe.
It certainly offers a compelling explanation for why our evolutionary trajectory looks so different from other primates. Okay, let's shift gears now from the biological to the cosmological, up into space.
Sounds good. What's happening out there?
Well, first, a bit of an anniversary. It's been a decade since a truly landmark discovery, the first direct detection of gravitational waves.
Ah, LIGO. The Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. That was huge. Einstein was right, again.
He certainly was. Predicted them over a century ago as part of general relativity. These ripples in space-time itself caused by unbelievably violent events out in the cosmos.
Like black holes colliding.
Exactly.
Right.
That first detection in late 2015, confirmed by September 2015 analysis, was from two massive black holes merging billions of light years away. It opened a whole new way to listen to the universe.
Can you briefly explain how LIGO actually works? It's pretty wild technology.
It really is. So imagine two very long tunnels, several kilometers each, arranged in an L shape. They keep these tunnels under an almost perfect vacuum.
Okay.
Then they split a laser beam and send one beam down each arm. The beams bounce off mirrors at the ends and come back to meet where they started.
And normally they just recombine perfectly.
Right. But if a gravitational wave passes through Earth, it stretches and squeezes space-time itself, very, very slightly changing the lengths of those two arms.
How slightly?
Unimaginably slightly, like less than 1/10,000th the width of a proton.
Wow. You can measure that?
That's the genius of the laser interferometry. That tiny change in arm length causes the returning laser beams to interfere with each other differently. They create a specific pattern, a signal, that tells scientists a gravitational wave just passed through.
So they hear the collision of black holes.
In essence, yes. And since that first detection, the global network, including the Virgo detector in Italy and KR in Japan, they've detected hundreds of these events, mostly black hole mergers, some neutron-star collisions. We're mapping the universe's most violent events now.
Incredible engineering. Okay, from the biggest collisions, let's come closer to home. Mars. You mentioned something about sand.
Yeah, this is cool. Instead of looking at giant canyons or volcanoes to understand Mars's past climate, scientists are now analyzing individual grains of sand.
How can sand tell you about climate history?
Through artificial intelligence. They're using AI algorithms trained on high-resolution images of Martian sand dunes, like those taken by NASA rovers.
And the AI can. What? Read the sand.
Sort of. The AI incorporates physics models. It looks at the shape, the size distribution, the abrasion patterns on individual grains. From that, it can infer things like the strength and direction of ancient winds over millions of years.
Ah, so the wind patterns sculpt the grains, and the AI reverse engineers that process.
Exactly. It reconstructs the forces that shaped those tiny particles. And that tells you a lot about the past atmosphere, how dense it was, maybe even hints about temperature in the presence of water, if wind patterns changed in ways suggesting flowing liquids, for instance. It's like geological detective work on a microscopic scale.
A whole new window into Martian history, grain by grain. Amazing. And there was one more space item, an interstellar object?
Yes, 3IATs. This is a comet, but it's not one of ours. It came from another star system entirely.
An interstellar visitor. We've had a couple of those now, right? Oumuamua was the first big one.
That's right. These are incredibly valuable because they're like probes sent from distant parts of the galaxy carrying materials formed elsewhere. So 3IAT Laws is currently making its closest approach to our sun perihelion.
And what's special about this one?
As it got closer to the sun and heated up, astronomers were watching its coma, the gas cloud around it, and they detected something totally unexpected: gaseous nickel.
Nickel. In a comet, aren't comets usually like ice and dust? Lighter stuff?
Pretty much. Finding significant amounts of a heavier element like nickel vaporizing off it is really odd. It suggests 3IAT Laws might have formed in a very different, perhaps much more metal-rich environment than our own solar system.
So studying it could tell us about the chemistry around other stars.
Precisely. Maybe it came from a system with planets that have metallic cores or near a specific type of star that produces more heavy elements. Each interstellar object gives us these unique clues about the diversity of the cosmos.
Okay, let's bring things back down to Earth. That speed of discovery in science and space is mirrored in a way, by the speed of change in our economy, largely driven by one thing: AI.
Artificial intelligence is absolutely the dominant force right now, reshaping markets, jobs, everything. And it's creating this stark divide.
The two economies idea.
Exactly. You've got this booming tech sector fueled by massive AI investment reaching astronomical valuations, and then you have many traditional sectors kind of stagnating or even shrinking. And this gap, well, it's driving a lot of the social and political tension we see.
The valuations are just unreal. Microsoft is nudging towards $4 trillion in market cap.
Right behind Apple, which already hit that milestone. But a lot of that value isn't based on current profits, it's based on the expectation of future dominance in AI. Investors are betting big.
But those bets on future AI profits often seem linked to cutting jobs now?
That's the uncomfortable truth in many cases. Efficiency is rewarded by the market, and right now, AI-driven efficiency often translates to workforce reduction. Look at UPS.
Their stock went up after announcing job cuts.
Significantly. They beat earnings expectations, sure, but also confirmed they're cutting around 48,000 jobs in 2025. The market cheered that as a sign of responsible, forward-looking management focused on streamlining.
Wow. 48,000 jobs, and Amazon's doing something similar?
Yep, layoffs of about 14,000 corporate staff, something like 4% of that workforce. Yeah. But at the same time, they're pledging, what was it, $40 billion for new data centers.
40 billion, all focused on boosting their AI and cloud capabilities to compete with Google, OpenAI, Microsoft.
It's an AI arms race. The market signal is crystal clear. Cut operational costs, often meaning labor, and pour that money into AI infrastructure and development. That's the path to higher valuations right now.
But for the average worker, especially in non-tech sectors, that sounds pretty precarious, even if the headlines talk about booming tech stocks.
It is precarious. And that widening gap, immense wealth being generated in one sector while others face instability, that's a recipe for polarization. It fuels political anger and distrust, which, naturally, brings us to issues of AI safety and control.
If AI is becoming so central, we need to trust it. We need guardrails.
Absolutely. You need ways to verify what these systems are doing, ensure they're accurate, compliant, ethical. This is where companies like LOAI come in.
They have that tool, TrueChecker?
TrueChecker 2.0. They position it as the immune system for AI. Its job is basically to fact-check AI outputs in real time, flag potential misinformation or bias, and ensure the AI is operating within legal and ethical boundaries.
And it's actually being used.
Oh, yeah. Germany's healthcare sector, which is incredibly tightly regulated, has adopted it. They're using it to help validate AI systems involved in diagnostics or treatment suggestions. That shows real-world trust is starting to build, but only with these kinds of verification layers.
Okay, that's about checking the AI's output. What about securing the systems themselves? Cybersecurity must be a nightmare with AI involved.
It's a huge challenge. One interesting approach comes from a company called SciDeploy. They're using machine learning to create what they call a digital twin.
A digital twin, like a virtual copy of a company's entire IT system.
Exactly. It's a concept that NASA actually pioneered, using virtual models to test spacecraft systems safely on the ground before they flew, or even to troubleshoot problems in space.
Right, I remember that. So SciDeploy builds a virtual replica
Of a client-specific live IT environment. Then they can test software updates, security patches, new configurations, anything on the twin first.
So you see if an update breaks something in the safe virtual space before deploying it to the real system?
Precisely. It drastically reduces the risk of a bad update causing a major outage or creating a security vulnerability. It lets companies be much more agile and proactive with security without crippling their operations.
That makes a lot of sense. But all this AI, all these data centers, they need a colossal amount of power, right?
A staggering amount. And it needs to be reliable, 247 power. This is pushing tech giants to look beyond traditional grids. Google, for instance, has made a pretty significant move in Iowa.
What are they doing there?
They're partnering with NextEra Energy to basically revive a nuclear power plant that was shut down, the Duane Arnold Energy Center.
Iowa's only nuclear plant. They're bringing it back online just for Google.
Primarily to provide stable, carbon-free power for Google's massive data centers and AI operations in the region. The goal is to have it running by 2029. It shows how critical, reliable, clean energy is becoming for the AI industry. They see nuclear as maybe the only way to meet those demands without wrecking their climate goals.
Nuclear power for AI clouds. Interesting synergy. Okay, so AI is powering the economy, but it's also becoming a tool, maybe even a weapon in the information space.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which leads us straight into the brooding information wars. Look at Elon Musk launching Grokipedia.
Right, his alternative to Wikipedia. Because he thinks Wikipedia is biased.
He explicitly claims it has a strong left-leaning bias. So his company, XAI, has built Grokipedia, apparently seeded with over 885,000 articles already.
And the claim is that Grokipedia will be, what, unbiased?
The promise, quoting Musk, is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Delivered by Grok, his AI chatbot.
There's a certain irony there, isn't there? Expecting unbiased truth from a generative AI known for, well, sometimes making things up or reflecting the biases in its training data.
It's peak irony, perhaps, but it highlights this deep distrust in established information sources among certain groups and the desire for alternatives that align with their worldview. It's a symptom of that polarization we talked about.
And that polarization is reflected in how politics itself is being conducted now. It feels less about policy debates sometimes.
Oh, completely. Political scientists call it the empire of irony. Discourse shifts away from substance towards performance, memes, and capturing attention through often absurd or highly stylized content.
We see political figures, President Trump included, using AI-generated images, videos, memes. It's about engagement and virality, not detailed argument.
Exactly. It's politics as entertainment, or maybe politics as cultural warfare, fought with digital tools. It bypasses traditional media gatekeepers and rational debate, aiming straight for emotional response and tribal loyalty. It's a direct consequence of the fragmented media landscape and that deep-seated distrust.
Shifting gears slightly within the digital realm but away from politics, Netflix is trying something new too. Interactive content.
Yeah, they announced plans for real-time voting features during live shows.
So, like, you could be watching a cooking show, say, Dinner Time Live with David Chang, and vote on what ingredient he has to use next.
That seems to be the idea, letting viewers actively influence the narrative or the events unfolding on screen. It's a move to make streaming less passive, more engaging, blurring the lines with gaming, maybe.
Trying to keep people hooked, I guess.
Definitely. And related to that, they've also revamped their kids' profiles. A new curated hub called My Netflix to make it easier for kids and parents to find age-appropriate stuff, making the platform stickier for the whole family.
Okay, let's pivot from the digital world to the physical and some really serious geopolitical hotspots. The Middle East, particularly Gaza, remains incredibly volatile.
Exceptionally so. Tensions flared up again recently. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered immediate and powerful strikes on Rafah, that's the city in southern Gaza. This was reportedly after attacks on Israeli troops there.
And that had immediate knock-on effect.
It did. Hamas responded almost immediately by halting the planned transfer of the bodies of some deceased Israeli hostages they were holding. It just shows how any military action instantly poisons the atmosphere for negotiation or de-escalation. It's a vicious cycle.
Meanwhile, you have these really strong accusations being made at the international level.
Yes, at the United Nations. Navi Pillay, who chairs an independent UN commission looking into the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory, delivered a pretty scathing report.
What did it conclude?
Based on their legal analysis, the commission accused Israel of committing 4 specific acts that fall under the definition of genocidal acts, according to the Genocide Convention.
That's an incredibly serious charge.
It is. They cited the immense destruction, the conditions making Gaza nearly uninhabitable, and called for accountability through the International Criminal Court. It highlights the stark international legal pressure building alongside the military conflict.
On the other hand, there are still diplomatic proposals floating around. President Trump suggested a plan for Gaza.
He did. His administration proposed a plan that would essentially divide Gaza into 2 zones. One administered by Israel, the other by Hamas.
Divided physically? How would that even work?
The details are unclear, but the concept itself raises immediate red flags. Questions about how resources for reconstruction would be distributed fairly, how movement would be handled, whether it just formalizes the conflict. Given the history and the animosity, achieving stability through division seems extremely difficult.
Yeah, hard to see that leading to lasting peace. Okay, shifting continents now. To South America, Venezuela, there was some cloak and dagger stuff revealed there.
It really reads like a Cold War thriller script. Reports surfaced about a failed U.S. covert operation.
What was the plan?
Apparently, a U.S. federal agent tried to recruit the personal pilot of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, a General Bittner Villegas.
Recruit him to do what? Fly Maduro somewhere.
The alleged goal was to get the pilot to divert Maduro's plane during a flight, allowing U.S. authorities to apprehend Maduro on existing drug trafficking indictments.
Wow. Did it work?
No, the pilot refused, apparently called the agent a coward. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan government put out its own story, claiming they busted a CIA-linked mercenary plot aimed at staging some kind of false flag attack to justify intervention.
So, completely conflicting narratives, classic intelligence standoff.
Absolutely. Venezuela denounces U.S. military activities in the region, authorized by President Trump, as blatant regime change attempts disguised by narco-state accusations. Washington points to the indictments. It's a mess.
And underneath all this tension, oil.
Always oil when it comes to Venezuela. They sit on the world's largest proven reserves, over 300 billion barrels. In a world facing energy supply disruptions like from the Ukraine war, control over or access to Venezuelan oil is a massive strategic prize.
Which could lead to desperate measures.
That's the worry, that the geopolitical stakes get so high nations might bypass international law, engage in almost pirate-like behavior to secure resources. It is a dangerous dynamic.
Okay, let's move to another deeply troubled region, Sudan. The situation in Darfur sounds catastrophic.
It is. A truly horrific humanitarian crisis is unfolding. The paramilitary group, the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, has taken full control of El Fasher.
That's the capital of North Darfur State.
Yes. They besieged it for months, and now they've captured it. It's a major strategic win for the RSF, but it leaves hundreds of thousands of civilians trapped. Estimates are around 260,000 people.
Trapped with the victorious forces, what are the conditions like?
Dire. Reports talk about acute shortages of food, water, medicine. People resorting to eating animal feed just to survive. And worse, there are deeply disturbing reports of atrocities.
What kind of reports?
Verified accounts, even video footage apparently filmed by RSF fighters themselves, showing executions of captives inside the main hospital in El Fasher.
Inside a hospital. Filming it.
It speaks to a level of impunity and normalization of extreme violence that is just horrifying. Complete disregard for human rights, for the laws of war.
And with the RSF controlling El Fasher, which is a key transport hub.
It solidifies their grip on Darfur, potentially paving the way for the country to fracture permanently. It makes the calls for urgent international intervention even louder to prevent further mass atrocities. The situation is desperate.
A truly grim picture. Finally, in this geopolitical segment, let's look at the economic warfare side. Sanctions, particularly related to Russia.
Right. The recent tightening of U.S. sanctions, enacted under President Trump, specifically targeting Russian oil purchases, is having a noticeable effect.
How so? Are countries stopping buying Russian oil?
Key buyers like China and India are finding it much harder. Their refiners are scrambling to find alternative suppliers and shipping routes, disrupting established trade flows. The sanctions seem to be biting, logistically.
And it's putting pressure on Russian companies themselves.
Definitely. Lukoil, which is Russia's second biggest oil producer, is now actively looking to sell off its foreign assets.
Yeah.
We're talking about refineries and operations in the Balkans, the Middle East, even some assets in the U.S.
Why sell them off now?
It seems to be a direct response to the sanctions, and perhaps pessimism about any quick resolution to the Ukraine conflict or easing of those sanctions. They need to consolidate, navigate the restrictions, stay financially viable.
Speaking of the Ukraine conflict, what's the latest from the ground there?
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky recently confirmed that Russian forces had managed to gain a foothold in Pokrovsk, which is a strategically important town in the east. So the fighting remains intense, with Russia making some incremental gains.
And on the Russian side, any signals from Putin?
Well, Russian President Vladimir Putin recently visited wounded soldiers in a hospital. During that visit, he mentioned the possibility of a, quote, pause in fighting, supposedly to allow journalists access. But in the same breath, he highlighted Russia's ongoing military modernization, specifically mentioning new strategic weapon systems they've been developing and testing. Things like the Burevestnik nuclear-powered cruise missile, the Poseidon nuclear torpedo drone, and the big Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM.
So talk of a pause, but also flexing military muscle.
Pretty much standard Kremlin signaling, showing strength, asserting that Russia's military capabilities are advancing despite the war and sanctions.
Okay, let's broaden the lens now to challenges that affect literally everyone on the planet. Climate change and economic instability. Starting with the climate, we just saw a monster storm, didn't we?
Hurricane Melissa. Absolutely devastating. It hit Jamaica as a Category 5 hurricane. That's the highest category there is.
What kind of impact did it have?
Catastrophic. Sustained winds were reported at 185 miles per hour. Storm surges, basically walls of water pushed ashore, reached 13 feet in some areas. The destruction across Jamaica and other parts of the Caribbean was immense. The death toll climbed over 30.
Just brutal. And it feels like these incredibly intense storms are becoming more common.
The data supports that feeling. Melissa is one of the most intense Atlantic storms ever recorded, and it fits the broader pattern linked to warming oceans, which leads to the bigger picture.
The overall global temperature.
Yeah. Climate scientists and reporting agencies are now projecting that 2024 is on track to be, quite possibly, the hottest year Earth has experienced in something like 125,000 years.
125,000 years.
It is.
That's staggering.
It underscores the urgency. We are in uncharted territory climate-wise. And this heat has massive consequences, not just in storms, but droughts, fires, sea level rise, which requires adaptation.
Helping vulnerable countries cope with the impacts that are already happening.
Exactly. But there's a huge gap between what's needed and what's being provided. The latest UN Adaptation Gap Report laid it out starkly.
What did it find?
It estimated that developing nations, the global south, will need somewhere between $310 billion and $365 billion per year by 2035 just for climate adaptation measures. Building seawalls, developing drought-resistant crops, early warning systems, that kind of thing.
Okay, that's a huge number. How much are they actually getting there?
This is the shocking part. In 2023, the total adaptation finance provided by wealthy nations was about $26 billion.
$26 billion compared to over $300 billion needed.
Yeah. The funding shortfall is at least 12 times what's currently being offered, maybe more. There's a massive failure of global solidarity here, and it means the most vulnerable are being left exposed to escalating climate risks.
And it's not just people, right? Ecosystems are under immense stress too. I saw a study about coral.
Yes, from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they looked at staghorn coral, which is a key species in reef building.
What did they find out about its resilience?
It's actually pretty resilient if it faces only one major stressor at a time, like a temporary heat wave. It can often bounce back. But when it faces multiple stressors, simultaneously, say, high temperatures plus nutrient pollution from runoff, plus a coral disease outbreak, the combination is devastating. The degradation and mortality rates go way, way up.
So the threats compound each other. They're synergistic.
Exactly. It means you can't just focus on one problem, like reducing ocean warming. If you don't also tackle local pollution and disease factors, the corals might still collapse. You need a holistic approach to conservation in this complex, changing environment.
A good lesson for many environmental challenges, I imagine. Okay, let's switch to the economy. Besides the AI-driven shifts, there seem to be some major macroeconomic storm clouds gathering, too.
There definitely are. And it's hitting even the largest economies. For instance, the U.S. just got a credit rating downgrade.
Not from the big U.S. agencies, right?
No, this was from Scope, a major European ratings agency. They lowered the U.S. rating from AA down to AA.
Why? What was their reasoning?
They pointed to deteriorating fiscal conditions, basically. The worsening government debt situation and ongoing governance challenges. Specifically, the political deadlock and inability to agree on measures to control spending.
And the debt is climbing rapidly.
Alarmingly fast. Reports indicated that the U.S. national debt increased by over $1 trillion in just the 2 months leading up to mid-October 2023. That pace is unsustainable, driven by high spending and the rising cost of interest payments on the existing debt. It raises real worries about long-term fiscal stability.
And this kind of instability isn't just a U.S. problem. Look at Argentina.
Right. A classic example of persistent economic woes. They recently received a $40 billion bailout package, largely backed by the U.S.
But it didn't fix things.
Not even close.
Yeah.
The Argentinian peso continued its slide. It just highlights the deep-seated structural problems and the chronic lack of investor confidence that plagues the country and, frankly, parts of the region. Bailouts alone often aren't enough without fundamental reforms.
Back in the U.S., there's also policy affecting consumers directly, something about medical debt and credit reports.
Yes, this involves the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB. The current Trump administration is moving to essentially override state laws that had offered protections.
Protections against what?
Against having unpaid medical debt reported on your credit score.
Huh?
Several states had passed laws limiting or banning this practice, recognizing that medical debt is often unexpected and crippling.
So the federal government is saying those state laws don't count.
They're using a specific interpretation of the Federal Fair Credit Reporting Act, or FCRA, to argue that federal law preempts these state protections. The practical effect is that medical debt, regardless of state law, could now potentially damage consumers' credit scores nationwide.
That seems particularly harsh given how expensive healthcare is.
Exactly. The timing is brutal. Other reports show the average cost for a family health insurance plan just hit nearly $27,000 a year.
27,000.
Yep, up about 6% for the third year in a row. So families are facing these massive rising healthcare costs, and now they potentially lose protection from having resulting debt hammer their credit rating, affecting their ability to get loans, rent apartments, maybe even get jobs.
It connects back to that economic pressure and instability felt by ordinary people, fueling that polarization we keep mentioning.
It's all interconnected. The economic strains, the political divisions, the technological disruptions, the environmental pressures, they all feed into each other.
Okay, that was a whirlwind. We've gone from creating life in a lab and listening to black holes collide, to the AI-driven economy splitting in two, to critical conflicts in Gaza and Sudan, the oil politics around Venezuela, and now these massive climate and debt challenges looming over everyone.
It's a complex, accelerating world. The pace of technological change, like with the synthetic biology and AI, is creating immense possibilities, but also deep societal friction. That two economies' divergence is real, and you see its effects in everything from political discourse becoming an empire of irony to the struggles over resources and sanctions.
And the need for critical thinking is maybe higher than ever, especially with things like Grokipedia aiming to offer the truth while established sources are questioned.
Absolutely. Whether you're looking at how coral reefs respond to multiple stressors or how nations respond to economic pressure, the lesson is that systems are complex and interconnected. Simple answers are usually wrong.
So let's end with a thought for everyone listening. We started by talking about synthetic life, creating it from scratch. Now, think about AI again. Researchers are seriously working on decoding the complex communications of animals like sperm whales. The Cetacean Translation Initiative is one example.
Using AI to understand non-human language.
Right. Now, imagine they succeed. Imagine AI allows us to genuinely understand whale communication, revealing complex thought, maybe even culture. Could that lead to recognizing non-human rights in a legal sense, a status we currently only grant ourselves?
That's a profound question.
If that happens, driven by the AI we're deploying right now, how fast do we need to adapt our own ethical rules, our legal systems, just to keep pace with the consequences of the technologies we're unleashing? What does that acceleration mean for us? Something to think about. What stands out most to you from everything we covered today?
For enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.